everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. And welcome to my May wrap up. So May was a crazy month. It felt both too long and not long enough at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like, I felt like it was going so slow in the beginning, and then towards the end it just kind of sped up. And it's like I just didn't have enough time to do what I wanted to do, which I feel like is an every month thing. Like, I never feel like I have enough time to do what I want to do, but especially for the month of May. It was an interesting reading month. So I was a little bit slumpy for parts of it. And I was also working on a specific recommendation list. So I ended up reading a lot more children's books. Like I read a lot of picture books and chapter books for the month. So if you're looking for the kids, I have them because I was using my library to read a lot of books. A couple of publishers sent me some stuff, and there's some interesting stuff that came out recently and some interesting stuff that'll be coming out soon. So let's get into it. The first book that I read during the month was I'm Not Supposed to Be in the Dark, and this is by Riss M. Nielsen. It is my first book by her, and it follows a girl named Arya. She has the ability to see ghosts. However, her family has been suppressing it. So they make her drink this special tea, and they tell her, like, you know, you're not yourself if you don't drink this tea. Her grandfather, he does like these potion work kind of for different people, like, and so she starts noticing some strangeness going on with one of her neighbors, who is also her former best friend that she had a falling out with. The first weird thing she notices is this rose bush that had been there for years just like catches a flame and dies. And then she just starts noticing he's been acting weird after not talking to her for so long. He's talking to her again, and then she starts to realize he is possessed by a ghost, and she has to figure out why he is possessed by this ghost and how to get this ghost out of him. I think she utilized a lot of very vivid imagery and lots of beautiful language. So if you are somebody who loves that type of writing, this one will definitely be one for you. It was marketed as a paranormal romance, but I really don't consider it a paranormal romance. Like, there were some speculative aspects of it, especially with like the ghost, but I don't feel like it fully dove in the way you kind of expect when you see a paranormal romance. It was also like very slower paced and steady. There was a lot more emphasis on their emotions, and I feel like at times like the romance kind of took a back seat because Arya is really discovering who she is and getting in touch with her Emily and her connection to herself, which I thought that part was done really well. I liked how the family was portrayed in this book and how her mother and grandfather were very much present on page, even if they couldn't always help her in what she needed to do. I also like that Arya is a mixed race character. She is Cape Verdean and Filipino, and that was represented on page, especially with her grandparents being around because she is closer to them. And I liked how she was just able to be a mixed character. There was no underlying arc of her being caught between two worlds and being confused like we often see in these types of stories. She was just able to be mixed and appreciate both sides of who she is. So I really liked that portrayal. Overall, like I said, it was a little bit of a slow burn, so it wasn't my favorite, but I did enjoy the writing and I would pick up more from this author. The second book that I read for the month was The God of Good Looks by Brianne McIver, and I really enjoyed this story. I didn't expect it to like it as much as I did. I listened to the audiobook as well, so the audiobook was an extra treat because I felt like it got the narration on point. And like, I was recommending it to a lot of people. I know some people picked it up and they had a good time with it. It was also dual POV, and it was dual POV in a different way than I'm used to. So we're following two characters. We're following Bianca and we're following Obadiah, and Bianca's POV is all through diary entries, while Obadiah, we're getting his direct POV. Normally that wouldn't work for me when we're getting two completely different style of POVs, but it did work in this book. And this is set in modern day Trinidad and Tobago. It talks a lot about the current government. It talks about the differences between the classes in Trinidad, and also some of the cultural differences between different groups. And I just really appreciated the honesty of this narrative because it kind of showed a style of a side of Trinidad that we don't always see in these books. I feel like sometimes when I pick up Caribbean Lit, it's very focused on the generational trauma. And while there were some generational things going on here, that wasn't the emphasis, which I really appreciated. And a lot of the conversations were very current and stuff I've heard from both friends and family who live on the island. I thought that the book did a great job showing you the island without over explaining too much for the US audience, which was something I also really enjoyed. So if you've never been to the island, it does kind of paint a vivid picture about how things are there and just like the little struggles some of the everyday people go through. So Bianca is basically a social pariah right now because she was having an affair with this politician and it came out and was plastered all over the media. And everybody's just like, of course, blaming the woman, even though this man is a married man who made his own choices. And he's actually sleeping with a lot of different women around the island. And it's kind of like an open thing that a lot of people know about, but still they keep re-electing him and letting him do what he wants to do, basically. So Bianca is ostracized. People are blocking her from getting jobs, and she's very frustrated. So she meets Obadiah Cortland, who is like the self-proclaimed god of good looks. He is very loud and he has a lot of witty remarks, and he's not the nicest person, and their first encounter is not nice at all, which I know is going to be a struggle for some readers because there is a romance that comes along the way, and people are going to be like, but how can she go to this man who insulted her? And he does like, they're working in the fashion industry. He's a makeup artist who also has like his own beauty brand that he's been working on building. He has his own fashion magazine, and he does make a comment about her weight when they initially meet. And I know like that is going to rub people the wrong way, but again, this is the fashion industry, so keep that in mind. And he does like regret what he said to her later on. But he hires her to work for his magazine because he figures like because her father is wealthy that some of those connections will be able to help bring up his business. And what he doesn't realize is her father is wealthy, but he's one of those wealthy people who wants her to build her own way. So she does end up like finding more of her own agency and becoming comfortable like expressing her voice, and I really enjoyed that. I thought it was a great journey to see how they both grow throughout the book, and I had a lot of fun with this one. I really enjoyed it. I read a picture book called Platonos Are Love, which is very similar to some recent picture books that I have read. And it's just about a girl and her grandmother and her cousin, and they are sharing community through food. They are cooking together in the kitchen, and they're cooking with platanos, which are a staple food in a lot of different cultures. And I just appreciated like how quick and easy and relatable this is and what it says about food and love. So I read 2 chapter books in the Beau at the Buzz chapter book series, and the first one I read was Beau and the Basketball Game. And Beau is this little boy who lives with his grandfather, and his grandfather owns this barbershop called The Buzz. In Beau and the Basketball Game, he is on a community team that his grandfather is sponsoring, and he's not very good at basketball. He's a little bit jealous of his best friend who is so much better, but he learns a good lesson about teamwork, and he even gets to meet one of his favorite NBA players. So it's just a cute little chapter book. Great for young black boys because there is just not a lot of representation for them when it comes to books. I was talking about this with a friend recently, how we just don't see too many of them for any age group really, and then that affects how they don't want to read later in life. So I appreciate stories like this where they're written by a black author and they feature like a little black boy, and it's just in a relatable setting. The next one was Beau in the Spooky House, and that's again in the same series, In this particular book, Bo is afraid of this creepy house that is in his neighborhood, but he finds out, that creepy house actually belongs to one of his neighbors who is widowed, and she's been having a hard time since her husband passed and hasn't really been coming outside. So he learns a little bit about being kind and reaching out to others within your community. Now, then I read the third book in the Isla of Adventure series, and I've talked about this series like in the past month because I read the first two books. And so it is a series about a young girl named Isla Verde, and she has the ability to talk to animals. She lives on this island very similar to Puerto Rico, and her mom has this store where she's actually hosting rainforest tours. So Isla is trying to help her out by creating the posters for the rainforest tours, but then they see all these people like running afraid of the rainforest because they said there's a monster in there. So of course Isla and her family decide that they are going, Isla and her friends decide that they are going to go ahead and investigate and see what this monster is. So it's just a great chapter book, easy to read. I was definitely looking for more stories like this for my niece so she can kind of ease her way up into middle grade soon. She's still just like stuck on picture books. So this is a great way to kind of bridge that gap. I also read Izzy Hawthorne, Destiny Awaits, which is actually by one of my author friends, Bethany Baptiste, and it is a book inspired by the movie Lightyear. And there was a lot of controversy surrounding the movie from what I understood because Izzy's grandmother is queer, and the conservatives were so upset that there was an on-screen kiss with her partner, and they need to get over themselves. It's ridiculous. This one is about Izzy and Izzy's dream of following in her grandmother's footsteps, how she gets over her astrophobia, and just what it means to live on in your family's legacy. So it was great. I think people, like the kids who like the Lightyear movie, would really enjoy this one. I read Fresh Juice, which is a book that comes out, I believe, later this month or next month. It is a picture book, and it is just about a boy and his father. They're going around their neighborhood finding fresh produce. His father like wakes up with a cold, and they decide a natural remedy is the best thing to heal that cold. So they're looking for different ingredients to make juice. And it's just an educational type of picture book that teaches you about the importance of having those fresh ingredients available within your community, specifically in an inner city community, because as we know, there are a lot of like inner city communities where it's hard to get fresh produce, and that there are a lot of food deserts in cities that they're working to kind of correct. So it gets a little bit into that, but this is like a lighter version for the kids to understand. And you also get to see a family that comprises of a blended family. So like you have this little boy Art and his father, but he also has his stepfather and his mother who live in a different household, and they all get along, and you see them interacting well with their neighbors. So I read The Little Mermaid Make a Splash, which I talk about in the Mermaid themed reading log that I did. It is just a cute picture book adaptation of the movie. I read Elemental Inferno, and this is a novella for anybody looking for like a diverse, spicy romance. They can definitely check this one out. So it follows Riel, who is an aura who has the ability to control the winter season. Different auras have the ability to control different seasons in this world. It's set during the summer. Something happens where the summer aura is murdered, and then the weather goes all out of whack, and then this mysterious man named Aiden comes in to be the new aura, but all the elders are very skeptical of him, and Riel finds herself instantly drawn to him, and she is not able to have sex because having sex outside of her season will release like her control, and everything will spiral, and it'll end up having a blizzard in June. So she's trying to keep her hormones under control, but Aiden is like really pushing it, and he is promising her a way to kind of get around the rules without getting in trouble. This is just a quick, sexy read. I read Anna Maria and the Fox, and this was a historical I was very interested in, but I didn't end up really enjoying it. So it follows Anna Maria, who is a young woman who, along with her sisters, was sent from Mexico to London. This is set during the French occupation of Mexico. And at the same time, Anna Maria meets Gideon Fox, who is a mixed race member of parliament. He's doing his best to push England to cut ties towards slavery, because even though England has abolished slavery, they are still benefiting from US slavery, including purchasing cotton from the US. So he is trying to do his best to abolish the ties that England still has to slavery. And I like that they were both vocal about making change, but the way they went about being vocal felt very, very modern in the way that they talked about race. And then there were just like some things I just couldn't buy. Like, you can't just go to a ball and start lecturing people about racism, and that's not how it works, and that's not going to get results. And it felt very heavy-handed to me. There was a particular scene where like some woman at a ball tells Anna Maria that she should lighten her skin, and Anna Maria and her sister act so appalled, like, how dare she? And it was like the biggest thing in the world, and I'm like, I understand being upset, but the way they acted was just too dramatic for me. It didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense for now, let alone back then. Like, we know people be racist and they will make ignorant comments to you, but like, just the audacity of this woman to tell her to lighten her skin, like, that would have been like a very more common thing back then for people to try to tell them to appear lighter. So I don't understand how this was like a big controversy, as big as she and her sister blew it up. But this book promises a marriage of convenience in the synopsis, and the marriage of convenience does happen, but it happens so late in the book. Like, this took slow burn to the extreme, and I was bored a lot of the time because I didn't feel like the two main characters interacted enough. So by the time we get to the marriage of convenience, like, my patience had waned with this book, because it was around almost 70% mark, and that's when the book actually started getting really interesting. It did do a lot of setting up for her sisters for the future book, so I think anybody who likes this book will love the sisters book even more. Zara's Rule for Record-Breaking Fun. So this is the first book in a chapter book series. There are 3 books so far, and Zara is the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, and she has all these rules for having the most fun time ever. And this new girl moves in, and she's kind of a little bit competitive with her, and she wants attention on herself, so she decides that she is going to break a world record to impress everybody, and she's trying all different types of ways to break a world record, and she's ultimately failing, and she ends up having to learn, like, it's okay, you know, to take the spotlight off of you and let other people have a chance. And they come to a solution on the records they can break as friends and working together. I read Chasing Jaguars, which is the 3rd book in a series, and one thing that's interesting is this author, Melissa Cristina Marquez, is actually a marine biologist, so some of the stuff she's writing about animals is based off of her experience. She's been on multiple TV shows. I know she's been featured during Shark Week, and it's a fun series. This was the 3rd book in the series. I read the 2nd book last year. I do just need to read the 1st book, but the nice thing about this series is you can read it out of order, and every book stands on its own without you really missing anything. So this Latinx family, they travel the world with their nature show, and I think it's a lot of fun because it like kind of reminds me of when I was a kid watching like Jeff Corwin and Steve Irwin, and watching Discovery Kids and all the different animal shows that were on TV at the time. And so they travel around the world helping out different animals. In this book, they're in Mexico, which is where their family is from, and they're trying to help with an endangered jaguar. In addition to helping with the endangered jaguar, there seems to be something going on with their TV producer. So next I read Bitsy Bat School Star, and this is a picture book that did a great job kind of introducing the idea of neurodivergency and autism to children. So it puts it in a way that they can uniquely understand it. And especially, like, I feel like sometimes with animals, it's just easier for them to understand and be engaged. So they start, the book follows Bitsy, who is a bat, of course, and she's going to school for the first time. However, she doesn't really fit in with the other kids. When she gets to school, they do things a little bit differently than she does. And the book kind of showcases how it's okay to do things differently and how some students have needs that are different from others and they might have to do things differently or require special accommodations. And I just thought it was like a nice way to introduce that to children and to show them like this important lesson that it's okay to be different. Then I read The Mermaid Princesses, which is, well, The Mermaid Princess is a sister tale, and this is just a cute picture book. I talked about it in my blog as well with my mermaid stories, and I showed some art from the book. It is beautifully illustrated. It follows three mermaid princess sisters who are all eager to be queen. And then I read The Little Mermaid, the novelization of the live action movie, and it is what it is. It's it's a novelization of the live action movie. So I watched the movie, so it's just interesting seeing where things like differed a little bit, the way the author saw it versus what was on screen, and like where she had to add in more to kind of give us, you know, put us inside the heads of the characters in a way that you wouldn't get when you're watching the movie. And I did talk about it along with the movie in my blog as well. And I read Sing Me to Sleep by Gabby Burton, and this is one that I really went into more detail in my blog. I loved this story. 5-star debut, which not a lot of debuts get a 5-star from me, so I really enjoyed this one. It is about a siren. She's the last siren in her kingdom because sirens are supposed to be extinct, and she has to hide her heritage to protect her family. She ends up taking this job with the prince after being blackmailed into the role, into the position to find out some information on him. And it's very fast paced. I know it manages to do the seduction of the siren without feeling like overly grown because this is a YA novel. And sometimes, you know, some books can toe the line between adult and young adult. So I like how this was palatable, considering the type of magical being that we're dealing with. And it still managed to be sexy without being like sexy in a these are teens, this is gross type of way, if you know what I'm saying. If you want to get more thoughts on that, definitely check out my blog. So to round off the month, I read When the Vibe is Right by Sarah Dass, and I liked her first novel a lot, so I was eager to read the second one, and it is another romance I feel like is perfect for the summer. So it is actually set in Trinidad, whereas her first book was set in Tobago, and we are following a young designer named Tess. She has big dreams of taking over her family's business. They run a mass band, which is very important in Trinidadian culture, because mass bands are the bands that provide the costumes for Carnival. So she's trying to take over the family business of designing costumes. Their mass band has not been making a profit for the past couple of years, and her uncle is reluctant to change things. And she ends up having to team up with her rival, who is one of the students at her school. He is a social media influencer, and even though she hates him, she has to bring him on to try and help them bring people back to the business because of the old school way that her uncle does things, and he hasn't updated with the times. They aren't getting as many people as they need to stay afloat. So I like the conversations it had here about traditional carnival and the newer carnival and finding that happy medium in between. This is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling, so I think the Shakespeare fans are going to enjoy this because they're definitely going to see a lot more than I saw as far as like little references here and there. I still, despite not knowing that play well, still enjoyed I liked the romance. I thought it was well paced, and I liked that it was an enemies to lovers that actually felt like enemies to lovers. I liked the chemistry. So even though the romance was a little slower, they had great chemistry throughout that kept it going. And the only critique I really had is that I feel like Sarah Dass writes these great concepts that would be better if the characters were older. Like, it happened in her first book too. I don't feel like these characters really felt 17. They felt like at least 23. Like, they just felt a little older and more experienced. So I would actually love to see what she does with an adult romance, but I know she has like I think a YA horror coming up next. I will still be checking that one out. So that's everything that I read during the month of May. Let me know if any of these books interest you. And as always, if you like this video, make sure and hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye!